crafty friends, this is Michael from ePaperie, and today we're moving on to the third portion of the components of a junk journal, and today we're looking at different types of bindings. And so I think I have about 10 of them here that I want to show you that are ones that I have used in the past, and a few that I just tried out to see how they would work. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to mention is some of the supplies that you might need if you're going to do binding, in particular if you're going to use sewing bindings. So you would need an awl or some type of a pokey tool. You would need a large eye needle, clips to hold your pages in, waxed thread or embroidery floss, or twine or heavy quilt thread, baker's twine or yarn, anything that you could possibly sew with. Glue, eyelets, elastic, a crocodile or an eyelet setter. We can start out by saying that there's different ways that you can bind a journal, but one of the things I want to say is that you can bind a journal first before you do any adding of ephemera or decorating. Or you can go ahead and add all of your ephemera and decorating prior to actually binding. I have done both these ways. I really can't tell you for sure which one I like the best, but one of the things that you probably should do before you actually do the binding is take care of any inking, stenciling, painting, corner rounding, anything like that before you actually bind your journal. It makes it so much easier to do those things, believe me, because I have tried it both ways. Okay, so now we're going to go through some of the bindings that I have used. Now, I'm not going to do a tutorial on each of these bindings, but what I will do is I will link in the description box a video of that type of binding done by another YouTuber, and that way you can go and watch their video if you want a detailed tutorial. I will mention briefly how they're done, but it would take me too long to actually do a tutorial on every single one. So, all right then, let's get started. Probably the most common way to bind a journal, the one that you've seen most often, is the 3 or 5 stitch pamphlet stitch. And I will show you an example of that. I made examples of all of these. So this is stitching, actually using stitches, and this is done with signatures and then sewn in with, this one in particular is a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. This one has 3 signatures in it, and as you can see the stitching here. That can be covered up with lace or something if you'd like to do that. So basically what you do is you put your signature together however you want it, and then you have made holes in your papers. In this case I've made 3 holes. The top one and the bottom one are pretty close to the same amount. I don't always measure out. A lot of times I just do it by eye, but the top and the bottom one should be, fairly close to the same. And then you want one in the middle. And then you want to do the same thing for your journal cover. Now, because this one has 3 signatures, obviously I've taken my spine and I didn't measure out, I just probably eyeballed it and made marks on my spine for 3 signatures and the 3 holes. And then I took my awl and punched those 3 holes. And then what you would do is you would thread your needle and you would do your sewing. Now this can be done several different ways. I've seen people do it all kinds of ways. The way I do it would be, if you want your leftover string in the middle of your journal where you could add charms or something to it, you start inside. If you want your tails to end up on the outside, then you would start on the outside. So in this one, what I did is I started in the middle. So I went down through the signature and through the cover, came back up in the bottom one, and then I went back to the top hole and sewed that in, and then I came through the center again, making sure that you don't split any of your thread. And when you get here, you want to make sure that the ends of the thread, one is on each side of this middle thread, and then you tie your knots, and that is your signature bound in your journal. Now, one of the, I think, disadvantages of this pamphlet stitch, and it doesn't show up as much in this particular journal, and that's because, number one, it doesn't have any ephemera, and it's not decorated, but secondly, it's small. So a lot of times these journals will not lay flat. They kind of bulge out, and they're difficult sometimes to write in. And that's why people make writing boards, so that you can stick a writing board underneath the page and write on that. That makes it a little bit easier to do. So that is the pamphlet stitch. You can do it either 3 or 5 holes, and that is probably the most common one that is used. The next one that I have, and a lot of these are non-sewing, which really makes it easy, especially if you're not into sewing. Sometimes the stitching seems like it's very, very complicated, and it's not really, but it is a little bit more time consuming, and sometimes you fumble a little bit more with it. So this next one is called a slot binding. It's no sew, and I just did a little journal with that. Now, I don't know that you would want to do a large journal this way with a lot of pages in it, but it's, and it's no sew. So that's a small one. And basically what that is you've got your 2 signature pages here. Okay, and I'm going to take this, let me take this apart so I can show you. Okay, I know I'm probably, okay, it's not this hard, really it isn't. Only for me. Okay, so you have your signature pages. In one signature page, you will put a cut, and I used a craft knife to do this, in the center of the page. Now, what I did is measure off a certain amount on the top and the bottom, and of course you want to make sure that, whatever cover you're using, that this portion, this slit, is within that middle section. And then you take your second page, and what you do there is you take and you cut a slit. This I just did with scissors. I just cut a slit, and again, this would be probably close to the same length as what these pieces are that are not cut. So you've taken the second page and you've cut slits on both the top and the bottom. And then what you do is you take your first page, you take your second page, and you basically just like roll this up. I hope I'm in shot here. Roll this up and stick it through this slot, and then there it makes your signature. So, and if you want to make a lot of these, you know, you can say, for example, glue this page to the page of your next one and make it into a pocket, or however you may want to do it. So I call this the slot or slice binding. It's a no-sew binding, very easy to do. And you know, when I did this one, I put some washi tape in the center of the pages so that it wouldn't rip or anything like that. So, okay, so that one is the slice or slot binding no-sew. Next we have elastic binding, and that also is a no-sew journal. And I think that you probably have seen this one. A lot of people will do this one. The advantage of this one is that you can take the signatures out after they've been bound in with your elastic. You can actually literally take the signature out, and then you can put it back in, or you can replace it with a different one. And this is done with elastic. I didn't have any particular kind of elastic, so I basically just used some that I had, and this is very tiny flat elastic. But after you've made your signature, you kind of take a look at your spine and decide where you need to put holes. Now this one has 3 signatures, so I've made 3 holes, kind of, and again, I eyeballed this. I did not measure, but you can certainly take the width of your spine and divide it in 3, and then you've got your placement for your holes. So then I did a hole, punched a hole. You can do that with an awl or with a punch if you want to do that. Then I set an eyelet in each one of those holes, and you do that on the top and on the bottom. And then the next thing that you do, I'm going to take this one out. Okay. The next thing that you would do then is pull your elastic, you know, fairly tight, and tie it off. Now, if you want the end of the elastic inside, you can leave it that way, or maybe you want it on the outside and then you're going to cover it up with lace or fabric or something. You can do either one. But again, as I said, the advantage of this one is that you can take your signatures out. So if you need to replace one or something, or even add, you can add to this if you want to. Say you decided that maybe you drew a picture and you wanted to put it in the journal. You could just cut it down to size to fit the journal and then add it to this. So that is the elastic binding. Pretty simple, but effective. Accordion binding. Now I have several different types of accordion bindings. So let me find the ones I got. Now this one is a small, very small journal that I made. And again, is a no-sew. This is what I call a page accordion. Now this one is pretty large. I mean, I have a lot of pages in there, which you don't have to put that many pages in if you don't want to. And it doesn't have to be this small, but, you know. So basically what you do is you take a square piece of paper, okay, and you find the middle part of your page and you put your corner, fold a corner piece to that middle and keep doing that on all four sides. Okay. And then what you do is you will take one of the triangle pieces and glue it to your front cover. These two will stay there. And then your next one you will glue to the next page that you've done. And this would make a nice journal spot, and this would make, you know, a place that you could just decorate up. And you just keep doing that in an accordion way, and put all your pages in, and there you have an accordion binder. Now this one I made small, and I made this out of a greeting card. So that was, I mean, that is fairly easy. I made one similar to this, oh gosh, could have been, was it last year or the year before, where I made a booklet for each of my older grandchildren. And my husband and I wrote letters to them, just talking about, you know, when they were young, the things that they did that tickled us, and what we thought of them and how proud we are of them. And it was similar to this, but what you did is you made envelopes, and then you would tuck the triangular top piece of the envelope into each other and form a book. So there is a video on my channel that shows how to do that. I thought they were really cute. Believe it or not, even though they are teenagers, the grandkids thought they were really neat. And then the next accordion binder is like a slot tab binding. And so this is the spine. It looks like this. Now, I have seen this done several different ways, but I'll try and explain it to you. So you make your covers individually. You make your covers, and I'm not going to go into how you make a cover. And then you put your signatures together, and you decide how big you want your tab to be, and you make an accordion tab, leaving the first section of the tab to be a little, here's one that I did for another type of binding. This is also kind of like an accordion. Okay, so you've left this portion a little big, and then you have to do a mountain for each of your pages that you're going to do. Okay, so you end up with an accordion like this. So then what you do is you take your page, and I thought I had a page here to show you, but apparently I do not. I thought I did. Oop, yes I do. Okay. So I'm going to use this as an example. So here, say this is your page, for one of your pages for your signature. You cut a slit again in the center of your page, and you want to make it, you know, about the size of a little bit bigger maybe than what piece of paper you've used to make your accordion. And then what you end up doing is you just put that tab in your slot like that. Push it down a little bit. And now you can do this again one of two ways I've seen. One way, actually I think there's like 3 different ways I saw. One way is you can take a heavier piece of cardstock and cut it down so it's a little bit smaller in width than this tab is. And then you can stick that cardstock piece in the middle, make it a little bit longer than what your tab is, and then that will hold it on your page. Now you could take and glue this down and I don't know, maybe make it into a tuck or just cover it with paper or a pocket or however you want to do it. Also, you can take another piece of paper that is at least as big as your slot and make it into a page. Now I just took a small one here and fold it in half, and then you can just glue that onto your tab. Now in this particular instance, when I made this big one that I did, what I did is I made this into a pocket. So I glued it to the tab, glued the bottom or whatever, and left the top open to make a pocket. And then that way it holds your page onto your binding. So that's, you know, a fairly simple one to do also. Now, what I did with this one is I did the last example that I showed. I did my slot, and then I took smaller pieces of paper and I glued them on the slot, and then I left one portion of the piece of paper open to form a pocket. And so in this sense, I made a top pocket there. The next one that I did, I made a side pocket like this. And then I just continued to do that through the entire journal. Okay. So this one is back up to the top again. Okay. And that's how you do that one. Now, what you do when you've ended, you've got everything you want, then what you would do is take this larger piece that you put on there before you started making your mountains, and you would glue it to your back cover. Now, you can glue it before you do the inside of the cover, or if you're not very smart like I was, you can go ahead and glue it down and then cover it with something else. In this case, I made a pocket here that covered up that, and then I stick a tag in there like that. And I did that on both the front and the back. So that's how you would make this one. This, I don't know that there is if there is any rule as to how many pages you can add. I guess as many as you want to make that tab piece, as many tabs as you want, you could probably do it. So that one is, again, fairly simple, maybe a little bit more time consuming, but pretty simple. And I think it's, you know, it's nice. Now here's the accordion part of it. So you don't have your spine bound. So what that does is it makes your journal very flat. So you've got everywhere in this journal, you've got flat going on instead of having pages that are bowed. Even once you put your ephemera and decorations and stuff in this, it should still remain flat, or fairly flat anyway. So that's that one. Tab binding. And this one, again, I'm sure that you have seen many times. This is made out of a digital of Aaron's that's an art digital. And so for this one, you're just basically taking, now you can use washi tape, you can use paper, you can use fabric, you could use lace to make your tabs. And then you just make your tabs so that they would be long enough to go, you know, across the both sides of the paper. And then what you would do is you start by putting down, like in this case, I put down 3. have to stop and think. I put 3 tabs down to add my first page, and I did this as a double page so that I could make a pocket, and there's a journaling card. Okay, and then what you do is you take the next page and whatever tabs that you didn't do before, like we started with 3, now we're doing 2. We add 2 to that page and add them. And you keep doing that for every page. And there you've got your tab binding. Oops, oops, oops. Why is that sticking there? Oh dear. The fabric stuck together. Oh, shoot. Well, that's going to be, well, anyway, I'll deal with that later. But anyway, you continue to do that until you get to the end. And then you would add your back cover. And in this case, I did the same thing. I made this into a pocket and put a large journal card in there. And again, I don't know if there's any rule as to how many of these you can, how many signatures or pages you can put into this. I imagine, you know, as many as you want to do. Again, this is somewhat, you know, loose. So one of the advantages of this is that it will lay flat. So that is the tab. Hidden spine. Okay. Here's one that I made, a small one. And with a hidden spine, and there's several different ways to do this too, and you can, I'm sure, just, you know, put in hidden spine and there are all kinds of tutorials that will come up. So I've made my cover here, and then I took a fairly sturdy piece of paper. I decided how many signatures I wanted. I put this paper in to make sure that it was going to cover the spine. Okay, hopefully you can see what I'm doing. And there is a tab on each side of the spine that you leave. And then I just drew out, tried to draw equal lines, equally spaced lines on this spine. And then what I did, you can either use any type of sewing that you want to do, like the 3-hole punch or the 5-hole punch, or you can do what I did in this particular one, and that is I just used my sewing machine. So here's that piece, and then I just took my first signature, found the middle, okay, laid it out on that piece, and then sewed it on that first line through the middle, okay? And then you have your first signature. Then you continue to do that for all of your signatures, okay? So now I have all of my signatures attached to this binding. Now, what you would do after that, and again, if you're smart, you don't put the inside covers on until you've done this, but you take these little tabs here and you glue them onto your covers. And then you can either cover it with your decorative paper for the inside cover, or you can add a pocket and cover it up, or, you know, do whatever you want to make that. And that is a hidden spine. Like I said, there are many variations of this, so you might want to just go out there and take a look at them. Okay, so that is a hidden spine. An exposed spine. I like this one. I think it's really fun. An exposed spine is something that is like this, where a portion of your spine is cut away. Okay, so in this case, I cut on my cover, I cut equal distances from both the top and the bottom. I cut it away, and then this part is just actually the spine that's holding it together. And in this case, I used buttons to hold them on. Now, and you don't have to do it this way, but I believe, let me see what I did. Yeah. In this particular instance, I just wrapped the pages around the middle of the signature. And as I did that, you know, I added my buttons, and I've got thread going through each button to kind of hold it on. And then I also glued the buttons after that too, just to make sure that they would lay flat. And so you're wrapping each signature. Now what I did is I put heavier cardstock at the beginning and the end of each signature. Okay, and I also put a slit in both the top and the bottom of the signature, so that when the thread wrapped around it, you know, it's not going to cut into the page. So that is that one. And this one lays fairly flat, but it's a little bit more, you know, a little bit more alligator than, because I don't have any decorations or anything in this. Whoops, I had that upside down this whole time. Okay. Anyway, and so then you can leave, you know, your ending sewing on there and put charms on it if you want, or whatever. I haven't done anything else to this other than just bind it. And it looks like I did have some papers upside down. Oh, get going too fast and you forget to pay attention. So, but anyway, that's that one. And in this one, I've got 3 signatures. And there's like 1, 2, whoops, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages. So that means 7 double pages. So that means you've actually got 14 pages in this one signature. So that is an open spine. I like it. I think it's cute. And you know, you can use beads here. You can do whatever you want to decorate that spine. Okay, the next one is the Coptic stitch. I had never done this, and I really wanted to try it, and so I did. Now, I watched a very good video, Natasha at Treasure Books, and I will again link in the description that video so that you can see how it's done. When you look at it, it seems like it's pretty complicated, but it's not really once you get the hang of it. And she makes it very, very simple to understand, so that it's kind of a braided spine. And this I did with wax thread. And so it's, you know, not as difficult as it appears to be. It's just that you have to get used to the pattern and how it works, and then it's not that hard to do. So that is the Coptic stitch binding. And again, this can be done on larger books with more signatures in if you want. Now it does lay a little flatter, but it's not totally flat. I mean, I guess if you wanted to push your pages down, it can be fairly flat, because it's left, the spine is unbound or unglued, so it's not hindered. So that is the Coptic stitch, and like I said, I've never done it before. I've been wanting to do it, and I finally found a video that gave a tutorial on it that I could actually follow. And that again was Natasha at Treasure Books. So that's that one. Then the next one, and I've seen this done on several other channels also, and it's just called an easy no-sew journal and binding. Now this one I put a closure on and I put a button on it. So there. But this one is again another wrap journal. The signatures are wrapped, but in this particular one, what you do is you take a heavier piece of cardstock for each signature. So you make a almost like a file, file folder type thing, where you put your actual signature pages inside this cardstock, okay? And you put your signature pages in that. And then you would bind, and I don't know, you could do this with a 3-hole pamphlet stitch or a 5-hole pamphlet stitch. I just wrapped it because it was quicker and easier for me to do. And again, the advantage of this wrapped one is that it lays fairly flat, and it makes it so that you can either add or take out pages if you want to do that. Okay, so that is that one. I've wrapped this about 3 or 4 times and then, tightened it up and tied a knot. Then what you do is you take your next signature and you wrap it the same way, okay? But you take the back of that cardstock and the front of the cardstock of the next signature, and you glue them together. And that's what makes your binding book stay together. Okay? And this one, I think I had I'm trying to think, 5? Yeah, I think I had 5 signatures in this one. Okay, and then after you've done that, you make your cover pieces, just like you would make any cover piece, so that you've got your front and your back cover. And then you take a piece of fabric or lace or whatever you want to use, I guess, that is cut to the same, pretty much the same length as your journal. And you will make that fabric, a little bit wider than the actual spine. And that is so that you have room to glue down that fabric on both the front and the back. And you glue it to your cardstock, not to your actual cover. You want to make it so it's, fairly tight, but you also want to make it so that when you pinch it like this, you've got a little bit of give. That is what is going to help with making your journal flat. So you want it tight, but you don't want it too tight. Then, after you've done that, you take your covers and you glue them, and you will glue this first cardstock piece to the front cover, and it'll, you've got your whole signature here. The entire 5 signatures are here. And so you take the first cardstock piece and you glue it to the front, and then you take the last cardstock piece and you glue it to the back. And that makes your journal. Now this one I actually made the covers just a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I think it still looks okay. So that is an easy no-sew. Now you can do it as I did and wrap the signatures, or you can sew it if you want to, and sew in the signatures with a pamphlet stitch if you want to do that. But that is the easy no-sew binding. So that is, I think there's 10 of the bindings that I have that I have used or that I recently tried out for you. And there are, I'm sure, a lot more than that. So if you go to the search bar and put in journal bindings, you'll come up with um, a lot of them. So go ahead and experiment with your bindings. Don't always use the same one. You can, but I mean, it's just more exciting to make something a little different each time and to challenge yourself to do something different instead of the same thing over and over again. So that is today the part 3 of the components of a journal. I hope you enjoyed what I had to say here. And again, I will put links to videos that show a detailed tutorial of all of these bindings in the description. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Leave a comment as to what binding you think you like the most, or the one that you use most often, and make some comparisons. Is there one in particular that you like better, and why? And then we can share with each other what our thoughts are on bindings. Thanks again for joining me. I'll talk to you later. Bye.